Well, good evening to the 2020 State of the Town address. One important thing that I'm really excited about and really proud about is that the state of your town is strong. We are in a very positive position to keep moving Timnath forward. And I want you to know that as we go through these slides, because what I'm about to show you is how financially strong we are, how poised we are for the growth that we're experiencing, and how ready we are to move forward without skipping a beat. So with that, I'm going to start a little bit with kind of some excitement. If you were here a little bit earlier, you probably saw the slideshow. Lots happened over the last decade, for sure. So many things are new. When I moved here in 2009, I was the only house on the street in my neighborhood. And now I look around and the growth has just been phenomenal, and it's been very exciting to be a part of that. We've got the July 4th event there, the new community park in Timnath Ranch. Our Harmony Road widening is complete. We've got now this last year, over 1,500 or 2,500 people attended the tree lighting ceremony. All the bikes are full during the summertime in the parks. And then now we're home to our first town center and our first community event here this evening. One of the things that we wanted to do with this space is provide a community space for you guys to be able to use that. So this is available for all of you in the future if you want to have a meeting, a group, a reunion, a family celebration, whatever. Just so you know, this is community space available for you all. This is just a little aerial pictorial of where we've come from, starting from 2010 to 2020. And as you can see, it's just a snapshot of one part of our development, but of Timnath. But it basically shows you've got Harmony Road right here, all the way across. And this right here is what was there from a commercial perspective. And now you look over here, we've got the town center, we've got Studio 68, we've got the little gym, we've got all these things that have been developing, but then also just look at the growth just in this one little section of our town. So a lot of good, exciting things happening. Tonight, I'm going to try and stick to the agenda, and I'm going to focus mostly on the financial health and then our projects and your capital improvement plan and what have you. But I think it's imperative that we take a step back just a minute and or take a step up from a little bit more of a 40,000 foot view to understand the national landscape and the regional landscape and how Timnath fits into that whole picture and what we're seeing with Timnath. I will tell you, I'm going to breeze through a lot of this. This PowerPoint is going to be available for you to have some wonderful bedtime reading. It is going to be great. So I'm going to cover a lot of this stuff rather quickly because I'm sure most of you are very aware of our environment, but I think it's important to kind of touch base there. I want to talk a little bit about, after we talk about the financial aspect of the town, I'm going to talk about the interrelationship between our Town Development Authority and the town of Timnath. And so as I talk about the finances, I'm going to talk about that in an integrally important way, because it's very difficult from an accounting perspective to understand the interrelationship, but it really benefits all of Timnath, and I think it's important to talk about it in a collective way, so that's what I'm going to do this evening. Additionally, we've got the capital improvement plan. So when we go to do our planning, although statutorily you only need to approve a one-year budget, that's not what we do at all. We actually look out 5-10 years as best we can, but certainly we put together a capital improvement plan that identifies what resources we're going to need in order to be able to provide the infrastructure, the projects, or what have you that are on the horizon. And so we have a 5-year capital improvement plan as well. I'm going to talk about that. And then the other areas of focus. So the 2018 resident survey is really what the basis is of most of our priority setting. It was our first resident survey. We had over 549 respondents to that, and so it really was a guiding document for us, mayor and council, as your elected representatives, to be able to put together a priority list, a project list, a budget list that basically matched what residents were saying that they wanted and needed. So I'm going to talk about that, and in that resident survey, we identified 6 areas of focus, and those actually correlate then to our 2020 budget. And we actually, each year, we put things in categories to make sure that we're giving appropriate significance to those particular areas. So those areas include public safety. Obviously, number one identified piece of the puzzle for what Timnath residents want. Economic vitality, transportation, attractive and a sustainable environment, and then in a rich community. And then lastly, how we envelope that all up, put a bow on it from a standpoint of maintaining the character of the town, and that we're keeping our uniqueness and our small town charm that we all so much treasure. So real quick, national outlook. Very low unemployment, historically low interest rates, and actually interest rates both savings and borrowing. So it's really kind of unprecedented that the rates have stayed this low this long. National economists, you can get every end of the spectrum, but in generally they have cautiously optimistic views that even if the next recession comes in the next 2 or 3 years, next year, what have you, it's not going to be as great as the Great Recession of 2008. And there's some reasons for that, things like better underwriting standards, more skin in the game from folks that are borrowing and what have you, so that there's less risk in the marketplace, and it will fluctuate with less volatility. And then lastly, we've got some modest GDP growth. So that's a good indicator that we're still on the right track, but we're not so drastic that we're going to hit a cliff, but we're also not stagnant or even going down. But this particular quote that I found, I feel is just incredibly, it's a little bit shocking to me, but it's so relevant. So more than 1 million millennials will become moms this year. And I'm not saying anything about the dads. They're going to be dads too. But the interesting thing is those millennials that are living in urban environments today don't want to raise their children in an urban environment. They want an urbanite feel in a suburbia world like Timnath. So they're coming. So I think that's a really relevant and critical point. I also, in October, I sat with Dr. Art Laffer. I don't know if any of you know him, but he's a doctor he's a national economist. He's worked with presidents since JFK, and didn't matter what party or what have you, through the years, and still is a very important role in the Trump administration as well. But he actually was at a presentation, and I sat with him for about an hour afterwards and was able to talk with him specifically about Timnath and the growth that we're experiencing and what we're needing to do from a borrowings perspective and to be able to be prepared for that growth and what have you. And this was an excerpt that he sent me from his, it's called the Tax Revenue and Deficits Part 2, which I would certainly be happy to send along the entire report. And obviously, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the gist of it is, he was talking about borrowings, and he said, borrowings are not good or bad per se. It just depends on the interest rate environment. It depends on whether or not you can get more productivity from those borrowings today in the interest rate environment, or if let's say savings rates are high, perhaps you can get more leverage from the capital that you save. So he basically then referred that to the U.S. economy, and basically that last comment was, as compared to the U.S. wealth, our debt also seems quite reasonable to me. And he also was one that said, he's not seeing any kind of cliff, which I found some comfort in anyway, even though, again, it's not going to be as bad as it was in 2008, but still. The interesting thing about that, though, recessions don't always necessarily indicate a drop in home values or in home prices. So if you look at the 2008 and 2010, this is a national slide from Windermere Economic Forecast that was done last month. And actually, there was only a slight decrease across the country in property values, even during the worst time in recent history. Interesting to note, Northern Colorado fared far better than the rest of the country. So in 2008 to 2010, even during the Great Recession, we only experienced a cumulative 3% decrease in home values, which we've long since made up as we've soared in property value increases over since 2010. But I think that's important to note, because as we look at stability and where we are, it's not going to be a bubble market as it might have been before. So now let's go down about 30,000 feet and look at the regional outlook. And again, I'll try and make this quickly, but as it relates to Timnath, 2019 housing prices stabilized in northern Colorado. 2019 average sales prices climbed 1.9% over the course of the year. And while interest rates remained incredibly low, Larimer County unemployment rate also remained relatively low, especially in Larimer County. Weld also, but slight tick higher. And Smart Asset website ranked Fort Collins Loveland as the number 4 among the country's most stable housing markets in 2019. Number 4. I mean, we're not even a metropolitan area. So it's, and we feel those results as well. So pretty stable environment in the region. But they're coming because they know about us. So we will experience a 9.2% growth, even just in Larimer County. That doesn't even count Weld. So over 88,000 households in Larimer County, an additional ownership of 8172. Northern Colorado has an extremely healthy economy, and this is one of the hottest performing areas in the economy nationally. And I think that's really important to note. Again, you know, once upon a time, I would get on a plane for travel or what have you, and they'd, where are you from? Well, I'm an hour north of Denver, because first off, they might know Fort Collins 20 years ago, but still that might be questionable, but they certainly wouldn't know Timnath. And now I just say, oh, I live in Timnath, Colorado. Oh, that's north of Denver, right? So, I mean, the times they've changed. But we look at the comparative median incomes for the region. Timnath is highest at $122,000 median income. We've got we're very fortunate that we have got a robust economy, an opportunity for a disposable income within our community. Additionally, we've got the highest housing prices, and so we'll talk about that a little bit later as it relates to how we've had to mix up the product type so that we can bring those families in that want to get started here in Timnath, raise their family in Timnath, retire in Timnath, and how they can afford to do that. So we've added some mix of product. So overall, again, I think this slide really depicts very well where we are from a Timnath perspective. We really are the nucleus of northern Colorado. We're right off the interstate. We're right in the hub of everything. We're right next to Fort Collins. We're right next to Windsor and Greeley. I mean, really, we are very, very well poised to be a very centrifugal force within northern Colorado from the market perspective. But also look at the numbers. Our single family growth, 341. It's higher than Fort Collins. It's higher than Loveland. It's only lower than Windsor and Severance, which are growing more rapidly right now simply because they had more platted lots and they were able to be out of the gate a little bit sooner this year. Now we're going down 20,000 feet. Now we're in Timnath. So certificates of occupancy. So what does that look like? Well, in 2019, we had 461 NCOs for 2019, and the light green is projections. So one of the things that I found interesting about this is, yes, we were sleepy, you know, right here in the 2010, you know, coming out of the recession, a little bit slow growth. But one of the things that I really think is important is we did a lot of planning here. We did a lot of preparation to get ready for the growth that we knew was coming. And now we're poised to be able to manage this growth in a very responsible way. But you also see the upward trajectory that basically shows it's controlled. It's not a big blip and like, oh my gosh, they're here, and we had no plans. We had no idea. So we've taken a very proactive approach in how we've prepared for this growth. Lot inventory. So right now there's a lot of talk about supply versus demand, and right here you can see in 2019 we had a bit of a drop in supply, and the reason for that is because we had enormous growth. People were coming in, they were just taking the lots, and we've got a lot of building. So some of those homes are not already established, but rather, you know, lots that are platted that are being built and what have you. So our inventory started to drop. But now we've got more things coming online, so we'll be able to keep up with that. So again, a healthy managed approach to how we're managing the lot inventory. Building permits, and I talked about this a minute ago as it relates to the blue line. Finally in 2018, we introduced our first mixed product type. home to the apartment building right across the street. So we are able to get entry-level folks coming right out of college. They can graduate from CSU. They can come right over here and get an apartment. They can start to work, whether it's commuting in the area or what have you. And then as they get ready to have their first home, we have a product type for that too. And so on as they go. So 2019, we had some mixed product. We now have some things online such as patio homes, townhomes, attached product, paired product. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have hopefully a senior a residency for folks that are ready to retire and lock and leave or need additional care. So kind of trying to cover all sides of the spectrum. In 2019, we were named one of the 25 greatest small towns as noted by Yahoo Finance. So the secret is out, and they are coming, and they love Timnath. And every time I'm out and about, and a perfect example, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but when the little gym opened, there were over 100 families there, young kids ecstatic to be there. And actually, as of the first day they opened, they already had to add additional classes because their list was full. Because people were so excited. There was such pent-up energy waiting to be able to enjoy that kind of stuff. So it's not going to stop, and it's how we plan for it and be prepared for it to make sure that we manage it in a proper way. So what does that mean? How do we keep Timnath moving forward? Well, we've got to be responsive to the people that are here. But whether they've been here 10 years, been here 15 years, we have some folks in Old Town that have been here, I don't want to age anyone, so I know it's plus 25. I'll just leave it at that. So that's how I talk these days too. So we've got to move forward in a very responsive way to the feedback of the residents of our community as we grow and become more diverse and have different needs and what have you. We have to be responsive to that. We also have to be financially responsible. So this doesn't happen by accident, and we certainly don't want it to happen to us. We want to be proactive and make sure that we've got all the financial tools and practices and processes in place to make sure that we can manage our financial situation responsibly. And then lastly, we've got to strategically plan. You can't plan for tomorrow. You need to be planning for 10, 15 years, which we started. The current group of mayor and council started 10 years ago. So it's important that we keep our eye on the ball, not only today, but that we're really looking out 20 years from now, and what's that going to look like. So how do we govern that? Again, back to the responsive part. So in 2018, we had our very first resident survey. We had 549 respondents, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about how our population has changed. But when I became mayor, we had 682 residents that I knew of, and so it was pretty easy to be responsive because they would just call me and just tell me what they wanted or what have you, and I'd be like, okay, well, and I'm glad I could answer that question. Now today we have over 5,200 folks. But 549 respondents for your first survey, I think is pretty impressive, with a 95% accuracy and some error for margin. But it had a lot of diversity. And again, the resident survey, I encourage you to go online. All of these materials are online and available. And you know, it's 102 pages. Please go through and read it. It gives you really more granular detail than I could possibly cover tonight. But basically, the first question we ask is, how are we governing? Are we doing a good job or not? And 55% of the folks that took the survey said, yes, you're doing a good job. We're pleased with what the mayor and the council are doing and what we see going on in Timnath. And 23%, again, back to that, some of them may have done this very early on, you know, maybe they're 3 or 4 weeks or what have you when they took the survey. 23% just didn't say because they didn't feel like they knew enough. And so of those 22% remaining, only 6% said that they disapproved of what we were doing. I don't know about you guys, but any political environment that I see out there, you don't see those kind of approval ratings. So I think in part it's because we were responsive and we're listening to people in the community, and then we're creating priorities based on that feedback. So the areas of focus, this ties into our budgeting for outcomes approach. And so these are the areas of focus that we've focused on inside the resident survey. And I think it's important to just kind of note a little bit, because I'm going to kind of use this throughout the presentation this evening. So I want to make sure you kind of know what we're talking about, or how we defined these particular areas. So public safety, that one is a little bit obvious, but it's a community that feels safe anytime, anywhere, day or night. And so we talked a lot about that. I'm going to get to public safety in a little more depth later on in the presentation, but what I really want to spend most of the time right now on is responsible governance, because I think people need to understand the financial condition of the town and where we are and why we're poised so well for growth and to be able to provide the infrastructure and projects that the community wants and needs. And it's not just a matter of managing, you know, the projects and the capital plan and all that kind of stuff. It's also managing your resources as it relates to people and operational efficiencies. And we're doing things every day, evolving into creating a more efficient process for things. And as you grow from, again, 682 people to 5,200 people, you've got to have those policies, procedures, things, those have to evolve with you. So we're doing things like creating good policy handbooks. It was more elementary at the beginning, and now we're a real grown-up town, so we've got to make sure that we've got all those things in place, and we're doing that. Economic vitality, though, again, I'll touch on these things a little further down in the slide, but economic vitality, what are we doing to make sure that we're sustainable? Not just relevant today, but what are we doing to make sure we're relevant tomorrow and 10 years from now and 15 years from now? And what are we doing to attract the kind of businesses and experiences and fine dining and restaurants and all that we want and need today, but that will be around 10 years from now, and not be like other communities where they open their doors and 6 months later they're gone because they weren't relevant. They were already obsolete. So we do a lot of things around economic vitality, and I'll talk about that. Transportation, what kind of infrastructure projects are we doing to make sure that we've got the infrastructure in place so that when they do come, it's managed in a proper way and not just chaos. I don't know if you guys have ever been to a place that hasn't been well planned, but in the Seattle surrounding areas, they have multiple communities that don't talk to one another. There's no regional planning. There's no comprehensive land use plan. And so you've just got chaos. You've got hodgepodge here, hodgepodge there, and no sense of what you're trying to create. Attractive and sustainable environment, a distinctive and well-designed community that is clean and green and serene. And this actually came from a planning session from the council in 2012. We came up with those words. Thought it was pretty cute back then, but it's really kind of true, because the charm that Timnath has today of open space, whether you're in a lower density home or a higher density home, we have the connectivity, we have the kind of modalities of transportation, be it bike, walking, what have you, that connects us all as one community, and that so that when you come across that bridge in Timnath, right on the other side of Whitesville, you're in Timnath. There's no mistaking it, because we have the look and the feel that we all have created together, and that's creating that sustainable environment. And then lastly, a rich community. How do we gather that sense of place? Through community building, through town events, through those kinds of things that make us feel like we are a complete Timnath. So I'm going to focus again on responsible governance, but just so you know, areas of focus in the resident survey, this is how you rated them. Again, public safety being number one, but responsible governance, again, number two, because we need to make sure that we're planning appropriately. I wanted to just take a quick second here, because again, when I started in 2010, I think we had six employees. So it's grown quite a bit. Today, our people power, we have staff services of over 20, and a lot of that has to do with the police department, because we are working towards 24/7 coverage, because again, that was identified as a priority. And we've got budgeted 4 additional officers for 2020. But we also empower use a philosophical tool of contracted services. And the reason that we do that is because we believe it can ebb and flow with our growth. When we don't need that many folks at the table, we don't get charged for it. And when we do need to ramp up, when Costco says, can you have a pad site ready in 6 months? Because if you can, we're coming. There's no way if we just had a staff that we could have ever been prepared for that. And so we believe in the contracted services component to not only have the nimbleness that we need as we are so dynamically growing, but also that we have the bench strength. We have expertise that is far above and beyond what you could ever have in-house inside a town of our size. So we've got 17 FTE, the ebb and flow, that's an average, just to give you a sense of our people power. So again, I'm going to talk, most of this conversation is really going to be about financial piece, because I think that's what is at the heart of what people really want to understand better. I've got the town of Timnath in quotes, and the reason I have the town of Timnath in quotes is because we have two governmental entities that are integrally intertwined, and that's the Timnath Development Authority and the town of Timnath itself. And it's so important that we understand how they work together, because at the end of the day, it really benefits one Timnath. It doesn't so much matter what spreadsheet it falls on, what reporting or what budget it falls on. So for the purposes of this discussion, I am going to combine the summary of the financial situation and in order to be able to get through it. However, again, for great bedtime reading, both budgets are online, and you can read them to your heart's content to the most granular detail you want. So a lot of people ask, well, we don't even understand. What's a TDA thing? We don't even get that. What is a TDA? Well, it's an urban renewal authority, and its purpose for creation was basically to allow areas like ourselves that are underdeveloped or don't have the infrastructure, like for example, early on at I-25 and Harmony, when we had no infrastructure, the Timnath Development Authority was formed to be able to allow us to get the financing that we need to build the infrastructure, similar to a mortgage, quite honestly, to be able to either issue bonds or tax-exempt loans or what have you, so that we can build the infrastructure today and we can enjoy the amenities today and also set the stage for future development that we wouldn't be able to do without it. So when Walmart was formed, the first $25 million was issued. And without that TDA, Walmart would not be sitting on the corner of Harmony and I-25. And I know with some good stuff comes some bad stuff, and I'll talk about the fact that we've got a solution for the Walmart parking issue, but we also are getting to enjoy all that revenue that we would never have had the opportunity to take advantage of had we not implemented the TDA. Costco, they wouldn't have even talked to us. They have a playing field that says you either have this or we're moving down the road. We had 11 competitors at the beginning stages of the Costco negotiations, and we would never have gotten it had we not been willing to take out the additional loan dollars to be able to build that infrastructure of on-site and off-site. The other piece, Harmony Road widening, wouldn't have happened. $18 million project, not a chance without the TDA being able to fund that. So I kind of want to liken it again to a mortgage. So a new family, you know, if they wait and save till they have $450,000 to purchase their new home, they're probably going to be waiting many, many, many years. But instead, the TDA is a financing tool that allows us to buy today, enjoy today, build today, and pay it over time in a reasonable way over an amortized period of time. One quick note, it's very important to note, the TDA will expire in 2029, and with it, and I'm going to talk about this in more depth, all of our debt related to the TDA will also be retired. It will go away, the debt will go away, the tax increment will go away, and we will have, right now, $74 million worth of projects that we would not have had without the TDA. And so it's pretty impressive when you think about it from the standpoint of amortization. How many people have a 9-year term left on their mortgage halfway through? So it's a really important, critical tool for us. And lastly, it will never come again. The legislative changes in the last 2 years across the state have basically made it impossible for new URAs to develop. We were very lucky to get it when we did. We were able to take advantage of it in the most, I think, the most sustainable way ever. Walmart and Costco. I mean, I travel across the country, and I mentioned that. Yeah, we've got a Costco and a Walmart, and you're 5,200 people? Like, you guys are so lucky. So it's really a critically important piece of the puzzle early on in our development. So again, Town of Timnath combined. So that's what we're going to talk about. And basically think of it this way. Town of Timnath is what you see and feel. It's your services, it's your operational services, it's your officers, it's your planning, your responsible government, your council, your mayor, all of those things. Some of the capital improvements as well rest on the side of the Town of Timnath. The TDA is your Urban Renewal Authority, and within its boundary, which is a large portion of our Harmony corridor, the I-25 Harmony area, within all that boundary are big, huge capital improvements, infrastructure, such as, for example, the Old Town Sewer. Would never have been able to complete Old Town Sewer and bring them off septic without the TDA. Access to funding, redevelop, removing blight and public improvements, and the council serves as chairpeople. So I'm the chairperson of the TDA, but again, at 2029, when that goes away, so will all the debt, and so will that funding vehicle. I want to take just a quick minute here again to talk about our financial expertise partnership that we have. Clifton Larson Allen is our Timnath Contracted Finance Director and Finance arm of our contracted services. And we are so really blessed to have that kind of level of experience and expertise on our team. Again, a town this size might have a finance manager, doesn't have nearly the kind of expertise or understanding of governmental accounting, special district accounting. They have over 60 years in business. They're one of the 10 largest CPA firms in the country, and they serve over they have over 6,200 employees in over 120 locations. They're serving over 10,000 governmental agencies in the U.S. They have over 600 in Colorado alone. And Christine Harwell, who serves as our finance director since 2012, has actually she's a general partner, a CPA, with over 30 years of specifically public sector financing and accounting principles. It's a very unique sector. It's not like other sectors. And so to have that kind of expertise is critically important. And she's been serving, as I said, since 2012. And then the other really important thing to note, we've had 7 straight years of financial independent audits, and we've had no adjustments from the outside auditor since 2012. Prior to 2012, when we first came on, let's just say that wasn't the case. So we had a lot of work to do in building the internal controls and bringing somebody on board that could really make sure that we were managing all of that appropriately. I'm only going to take a second here to talk about BBVA, and no, you don't have to read that, but the important thing to note is at the issuance of the first $25 million of bonds, BBVA was the bond issuer. They were the financial institution that was involved in that. And they have been a strong, strong partner ever since. In 2012, when we refinanced the bonds and released back $2.5 million to the town because a tax-exempt loan was more favorable for us in that rate environment, we went out to market and we checked with others, and they just did not have the municipal understanding, and BBVA rose to the top during that reissue. We did that again in 2015, and we did it most recently in 2019 when we issued our certificate of participation going out and found that BBVA, because they understood us, because they understood governmental financing, they were, again, the winners as far as the most attractive rate and terms and what have you for us. So we've continued that partnership. But they have $93 billion in assets from a U.S. perspective. They have over $700 billion from a global perspective. And even here in the Colorado market, they've got over $4.6 billion. And we've got expertise there on their team that only deals with public finance, government sectors, special districting agencies, and what have you, so they truly, truly understand Timnath and where we are in our borrowing needs and what have you. And in fact, most recently, in looking at our property tax valuations, they said we have more capacity, and perhaps we should consider that because, again, the TDA is going to retire in 2029, and we should take advantage of that while our debt service would be relatively low. I want to talk just a minute before I go into the finances as a kind of a scope of how to look at our finances. So think of Timnath as a business, and think of it as a relatively young business and maybe even a startup business. And there's a life cycle that happens regardless of the maturity of the business. It goes up, and then you either decline or you start over, you renew, revive, and go again. So I would say in 2010 we were relatively young in our startup. And I also would liken this to a financial cycle of a person. That might help a little bit with some of the thought process. But think of it like maybe this is where a student has got student loans. They maybe just financed their first car. Maybe they're starting to get a first home, a small starter home. And then as they mature, then they create more assets, more wealth, and what have you. Then they get to a place where they've got much more cash flow availability. So right here, they may have a mix. They may not be looking as much for the borrowings and what have you, but rather they can fund some of it themselves. Then they may still use some borrowings for part of it. And then you get to the stability and evolution part of the cycle, and that's where you're really reaping the rewards of the investments that you made here and really starting to build for your future by whether it's your own assets or what have you, garnering that cash flow availability. And then right here, so in 2030, when our debt is retired, we really feel like we'll be about right there. And then some of our community neighbors, quite honestly, Windsor, Severance, they're kind of in a startup mode again as well. They've experienced that maturity, but now they're growing dramatically again, and they're having to start all over. So think of it that way as we go through this explanation. This is a slide I want to spend just a little bit of time on so that you truly understand this, because it's a kind of a convoluted slide, but I think it's so critically important to our financial picture as it relates to the TDA. So this line right here is our annual debt service. So you'll note it started here with 30 million. It was actually 25 and change or something when it first started, and that was back in 07. So it was online when this current leadership came on board. But so it's gone up because we've had additional issuances, so the debt service has peaked. But now it will start to decline, and again, by 2029, all that debt service will be retired. It will be completely retired. The annual debt service, though, if you'll note here, it rests right on top of the property tax, and that's very purposeful. So when we looked at what we wanted to do, we wanted to create those sales tax revenues, but we didn't want to rely on them because that was dangerous, especially in this environment where sales tax could change with the online retail environment, what have you. We don't know 100% what the future is, but so we wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to manage our debt service. So these are property taxes through natural growth and what have you. When this debt is completely retired, we basically will not see much change because the debt service will basically just go away, and our property tax will be so it'll be relatively a neutral observation as it relates to the property tax piece. But look what we've built. And this is going to continue to escalate. Today we see over $8 million in sales tax annually brought to the coffers, so to speak, because of this TDA loan that we would not have if we did not have the TDA borrowings. And that's really critical because this isn't just like Fort Collins has actually declining retail sales tax right now. They don't have a Costco. They don't have a Walmart. So even as Walmart and Costco begin to move online, and maybe the physical sales tax might change, they have a physical presence in Timnath, so we will continue to be able to enjoy that sales tax. And that will also continue to escalate because we've made investments in our infrastructure that allows additional commercial to come to the table and add to that sales tax base. So where did that money go? Okay, so 74,795, and again, if you go to do the financials math, you know, Christine Harwell would make me say to you, just so you know, this is for illustrative purposes and discussion only, the true accounting, what have you, it all adds up, but it's in the details online. But the $74 million that we have as total loan proceeds, here's the kinds of things that we paid for with that. So again, we had the $25 million investment in Walmart. We had an $18+ million project in Harmony. We had Old Town improvements, bringing sewer to the town. We had all of our Costco improvements, Riverbend infrastructure to build the Civic Center. We had Harmony Road and Latham. Those are scheduled. Oh, the Signal, that's been done. Timnath Community Park, we've already completed phase 1, and so some of these are future. We still have some dollars yet to spend, but basically that's where the monies went for the loan proceeds. So this is the important part. So what does that mean from our financial health perspective? So right now, today, our TDA loan is sitting at $60 million because we've already reduced that principal to date through debt service payments and what have you. And again, it's completely paid off in 2029. The certificate of participation for the town center at $8.5 million, it has a 12-year term. So it will also be completely retired in 2031. Think of this, I mean, it sounds like a fancy name, but just think of it as a 12-year mortgage, because that's basically what it is. It's a lease participation that at the end of the day, we own the asset and it's paid off. And then we've budgeted for, and this is an estimate, but we've budgeted for the police building in 2020 and for completion in 2021. And it also would be paid off in that 12-year term. And that could vary slightly just depending on the actual close date and what have you. So just so you know though, but all $80 million, all paid off in 2032. And yet we've been able to enjoy, since the going vertical of Walmart, we've been able to enjoy all of the amenities that we have today that we wouldn't have had without the TDA. So what does that mean per resident? Well, if you take that $80 million and you take our 5,200 residents that we have today, and that's an estimate, so it could be 5,218, but we know for sure it's over 5,200. That debt per resident is $15,365. But if you look at the revenue per resident, and here's how this calculation happened. We took the $8 million in sales tax that we get today, and we kept it flat. So no more growth in sales tax over the next 10 years, and we also have no more growth of residents, but we divided that $8 million, $8 million times 10 divided by 5,200 to come up with $16,000 in revenue for the resident, knowing that that's actually higher because we are going to experience growth. We experience it every month in sales tax. So the approximate net benefit per resident, almost $1,500. I mean, for a young town our size, that's unheard of. Severance has almost zero sales tax. And their borrowings today are zero because they only have a $1.7 million budget. They cannot handle one bit of fluctuation, but they're saving and saving and saving so that they can actually go out and do a bond issuance for $75 million, $100 million for water infrastructure. So they will never have sales tax. They will never have a consumption tax. And the reason why this is important to you, that it's consumption tax that we're creating instead of property taxes, again, when you look at this chart, so right here, the property taxes, the sales tax continues to increase, and that goes into that's people who are using it. So the people that go to Costco and are causing problem on a road, they pay for it. I mean, if it's you too, that's great. You can pay for it too, but we're getting people that are using the amenities to pay for it rather than through property taxes. And why is that important? because today Timnath is one of the lowest mill levies in the northern Colorado region. We're almost half of the rest of them. Severance is 12.5, and they're going to increase to be able to pay for that water infrastructure. Windsor, 12 point, Fort Collins, 9, Loveland, 9, plus mills, and all of them are talking about potentially sales tax or property tax increases. The thing that this is also so important from a debt perspective is that property taxes don't need to increase to pay this debt off in 2029. So even if we had a slight fluctuation and a recession, and we had a slight fluctuation and a downturn in, let's say, 3% valuation, we can still pay our debt service through property taxes without increasing our mill levy. And that's really critically important to you, because now you can say, okay, well then let's use this money so that we can build the infrastructure that we need. So again, right here for Christine Harwell's CLA's benefit, this is summarized for discussion. This is not according to GFOA or GAAP accounting. But the combined TDA budget, so we kind of broke this down into basically main categories. The other basically is intergovernmental, so that's again the TDA, talking back and forth and what have you, the loan proceeds, those kinds of things are in that other category. So we've got 89.6 million in total revenues for the 2020 budget. For the expenses, we've got 68 million. So, and that includes not only our operation O&M, but it also includes our debt service, and it also includes all of our capital projects, over 30 million that we have budgeted yet for this year. That leaves us with a net, or a ending fund balance of 21.6 combined in dollars. And people will say, well, that's some of that is borrowing. Well, that's right, because actually when I get to the budget projections, I'll show you over the next 3 years, we actually have $56 million still in capital projects that we need to do. And that money is going to be used when the time is right. So we're saving it to make sure that we have it for when those projects come due. So this is kind of what you would see if you went online for the 2020 budget just for the town. So again, ending fund year balance, 19.9 million, of which only 4.8 million is restricted. So we've got 15 million sitting there just in the town budget for, and that doesn't include our working reserve, sitting there waiting for us as we plan out the next 5 years. So this is the slide I was talking about, and again, this is a combined. So again, you've got a 22.3 million ending fund balance. Let me just note here, the reason why that number is slightly different than the one I showed you before is because this was as of November of 2019 actuals, and now the other slide was as of January of 2020. So there's slight adjustment in the number. But still, at the end of the day, we've got 22.3 million in available cash for our projects. But what I wanted to show you here was the total expenditures right here on this line item. Again, we've got over $53 million in capital projects that we've slated for the next 3 years in planning out ahead of time. Again, statutorily, we only need to approve a 2020 budget, but we don't stop there because we think that's not very good proactive planning. We budget all the way out as best we can. Now, it gets murky here. There's no, I'm not going to tell you it doesn't. I mean, you know, 5 years out, it's very difficult to figure out for sure. But we do our best to make educated guesses in our planning. But what if we're just all wrong? What if Dr. Laffer's wrong? What if all the national economists are wrong? What if all the Northern Colorado economists are wrong? What if we're wrong? And worst case scenario, the sky does fall, we have a crash, there is a cliff, and we're heading towards it. So we wanted to take a look at what does that look like in 2030, just in case. Because we want to know, we don't want to just hope for the best. We want to plan for the worst and hope for the best. That's a way to say it. So key assumptions. How did we figure this? Well, we said, okay, everybody forgot where Timnath was. They can't find it on their GPS, and so nobody else comes starting tomorrow. So yay. I mean, for some people they would say yay, but yeah. So, but we decided only 2% valuation increase on the whole 10-year period of time. We said, okay, only 5% costs on escalators over the whole period of time for construction. But we know today it's that those escalators and construction costs annually are over 5%. So that is an incredibly conservative figure. We said, okay, only capital outlay that we have to have. We only if we have to fix a road, whatever it is, only what we have to have. And only the only other new debt or borrowing would be for the PD facility, and no new revenue sources. So no creation of additional sales tax opportunities, nothing. It's completely flat. Even with that, we have $7 million left. After debt service, after we paid off all of our debt, after we've done the things that we've had to do to keep our doors open, to keep our people safe, that's police officers, that's the police building, that's all of that stuff. We still have $7 million left with those conservative figures. So from a 2030 worst case budget perspective, to me that seems very financially sound and strong and healthy and robust and ready to thrive and ready to grow responsibly. This was also in the resident survey, and it's pretty right on. Do you understand what a metro district is? Yeah, so some people, we don't know, we're not sure, maybe we do, we're not sure if we do, what have you. Well, I think the only thing that's important here to note is some of you live in a metro district and some of you don't. And a metro district, much like a mortgage, allows you to enjoy the amenities today that you can't afford to pay up front. And so you pay for it over time so that you can enjoy your parks and your trails and your infrastructure and your roads and your sidewalks within a side of a development. Without a metro district, most developers would not be able to bring a house online under $500,000, $750,000 in a very small environment. Certainly not enough to be able to provide parks and open space and all of those things. So this gives you an opportunity, and what the Metro District does basically is charges a mill levy to be able to pay the developer back for those infrastructure developments within that Metro District. The town is not part of the Metro District. The town does not get 1 penny from the Metro District as it relates to the mill levy that is collected for that. So it's important to know that. Now we may get fees for the Metro District, we may get something else, but we don't have it's a completely separate governmental entity. And I just wanted to make that clear because in the resident survey we actually did some education and had Metro District 101, and still there was only slight improvement in regards to the knowledge of it. But we do have another governmental entity that was recently formed called the General Improvement District. And this is important to note because it falls along the Parkway, just east of the Parkway, which is also just east of County Road 5. And the Parkway is being developed now. And the reason for the General Improvement District that we put in here is because what we wanted to be able to do is, it's a very, how do I say it? It's a much bigger project than most developers would have to bear in a normal development of that size of the landings. So the landings is, got their plat, they're ready to go, they're going to start building, but they're basically only one of the few that rest adjacent to what this 4-lane Parkway will do. And so what the General Improvement District allows us to do is over time, through absorption, be able to reimburse for those infrastructure costs of building that parkway and those extraordinary expenses. And that's important to note because the town council does serve as a board, but right now there's only one impacted person within the district, and so until the buildings or the homes are built, they're the ones that will pay for this General Improvement District, not people nobody living here today in other areas will be impacted by this General Improvement District. And I just wanted people to know that because it was relatively new and perhaps you hadn't heard of it. Capital improvement plan. So I'm going to just make this really short. We've broken this down into 5 categories. Again, all the detail is in our capital improvement plan that's online. But at the end of the day, we've got $30 million in projects here, 16 here, 6 million here, for a total of 53 million over the course of the next 3 years that we've planned for, budgeted for, and ready to enact on to make sure that we're ready for the future. So, ranking and building projects. I just want to talk for just a minute now because I said I would get back to the police department. This is what was ranked in the resident survey as far as priorities for buildings. Police department, recreation center, and Timnath Town Center. And Timnath Town Center was 3rd. And so you might ask, well, why did you build that first then before you built the police building if it was a #1 priority? And it was really, truly, at the end of the day, it was logistics. So our admin building, we had already gotten to capacity from a town staff perspective. We knew the recreation center is going to be a ways out because it's a very expensive project, something we definitely want to do, but it's going to take a little bit more time. So our need right now was to find a way to house our admin, and what could we do to create a community gathering space that could kind of meet the needs in a short-term basis. And so what we created was this town center, and actually over 50% of this space is for the use of the communities. Again, you can rent out the rooms, whatever you want to do. So then what that allowed us to do is take the current admin building, reconfigure it some so that our current 8 officers, now 9 with our sergeant, would be able to be housed there. They're already pretty close to capacity. It's cramped, and evidence storage and things of those natures are not adequate for their going forward. And again, I showed you earlier, we've got 4 additional officers that are going to be added to the equation even yet this year. So our goal is to make do while we hurry and we're in the final stages of the design process for the police station, and we should have that ready to start construction by the middle part of this year or end of this year for completion in 2021. That's all budgeted, so that at the culmination of the doors opening to the police center just down the street here, that we would then also have the officers on board to be able to have the space available for them. So I wanted to just kind of explain why we kind of changed those projects around. So what does again, I've talked about the town center building, but one other thing on the responsible governance section before I leave that is the fact that during the resident survey, or in the resident survey, also talked about communication and transparency. And as a town begins to grow, we continue to evolve in best practice and how we're going to get that word out there in the communication. I mean, again, when you had 600 folks, it's pretty easy to get the word out. And now, well, this person wants an email blast, and this person wants it on the internet, and this person wants a phone call, and this person wants to sit down for coffee. So we're working on ways to continually be more transparent. I talked about the public safety again noting it's #1, but one of the things I just wanted to point out is we are moving to 24/7 coverage. Larimer County's resources are stretched very thin, and although they support us in the evening hours, their response time is not good, and we don't think that it meets the expectations of our residents. And we think, based on the resident survey again, that we need 24/7 coverage so that we can have quicker response times than 27 minutes at 2 o'clock in the morning. But we also are doing a market analysis to make sure we have competitive salaries so that we can bring the best, we can retain, but also bring the best and track the best police officers. Policies such as body cameras and what have you. And then really importantly, just a quick note of our new leadership in the interim town manager, Terry Jones, who brings to us a wealth of experience. You can find out more about him, but really is a great leader helping us get that police department ready for our future. So, economic vitality and development, I will go through this relatively quickly, but again, talked about what's important: retailer incentives, strategic land acquisition just for our future in general, and the artisan market development in all. And again, more detail within the resident survey, so I encourage you to go online and look at what that is. But these were how they were ranked. Yes, and retailer incentives are important in attracting the right businesses and services to our community. And we do believe that we want to secure a dream book, and I'll talk about that in just a second. And also, yes, for our future, making sure that development doesn't happen all around us, and then we're not able to create a path for our own future. So those things were important to residents. So other things that are important to residents are proactive, future-thinking things. Again, I talked about the fact that we don't want to create obsolete experiences or environments that are going to be gone next month and then we're sitting with an empty building. We want to attract the kind of experience, dining, service, whatever, that is really kind of home to Timnath and really kind of creates that complete Timnath that we want to have. The International ICSC, we've attended this for the last 6 years. And it's really important. It's the largest retailer conference in the world. And not only do we do it to go out and actually, I've had conversations. That's where the impetus for the conversation with Costco started. And we attracted them and then, ended up negotiating and what have you. But it's sitting down with them. It's kind of like speed dating for retailers. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it's 35,000 people. And you literally have 10-minute conversations as to why they need to choose your place to come do business. So it's very strategic and what have you. But the other thing that it does is it really creates a learning opportunity to understand the trends, what's happening, what's already obsolete. This whole moving in what the retail environment looks like today. The strip malls are gone. Like, how do you create that environment where it's an experience and they walk from their home on the trail and they go there for the evening to listen to music and then go have a nice dinner and then maybe go do an experience thing, or they do a boutique shop there or what have you. So how do you create those as we move online and what have you? An example for that is we had conversations for years. We need a grocery store. We need a grocery store like King Soopers. We still have land set aside working with the developer to say, okay, when they're ready. Well, guess what? they were all ready to go, 90,000 square foot building, and then they went from 15,000 stores in 1 year to 15 stores in 1 year across the country. And I don't know if any of you saw Lucky's yesterday, but Lucky's is gone. So what will that retail, or what will that grocery store look like for us in the future? Maybe it is Prime Now and Instacart for deliveries and Amazon for deliveries, but maybe we have a boutique, high-end, fresh produce, fresh organic meats, what have you. So it's constantly evolving in what that experience needs to look like. So we're trying to make sure that we're proactive in that as well. And then lastly, the retailer incentives, not just giving any, not just, and nothing, I don't have anything against Sprint. I mean, I have Verizon, but I don't have anything against Sprint. But if I see one more new Sprint store, everywhere you go in a new shopping center is like, there's a Sprint store. And I'm like, that's not relevant. I don't even buy my phones in a store anymore. Very seldom you even need to go in there. So creating those kinds of environments. By the way, that's the little gym grand opening that was so exciting. It's creating those kinds of, incenting those kinds of retailers. This is the strategic land acquisition for the Dream Book. And again, I'll just show you this right here is the parkway that is to be built starting this year. This is Main Street right here. This is the 17-acre parcel, 6 of which was dedicated to us and 11 acres of which we purchased because it's a blank slate. And we didn't want to be like Windsor. Windsor's great. They've done wonderful things with the redevelopment and what have you, but they had to work around. They didn't get to create it from a blank canvas. We did this about 4 years ago in creating the Dream Book and what that vision is. And I take that to ICSC every year and say, this is what we're trying to create. Boutiques, amphitheaters, craft breweries, craft distilleries, whatever the case may be, a real experience. And also, by the way, it's connected to right in the heart of the Poudre River Trail. So you can go from LaPorte down to Greeley, and you can be right in the heart of Timnath on your bicycle for the Saturday afternoon kind of thing. So one of the things that we did in addition to that, we also have purchased some properties in the downtown area, and people have asked, well, why those properties? You can't always necessarily say, well, we want this property and this property and this property, but when they've come up for a sale and they have been properly priced and we're able to grab them, we've set dollars aside for that so that we can start to create this whole thing over time. Maybe it's selling that property and purchasing another or what have you, but at least now we have more and more control over our own destiny and what that looks like. We've also done other strategic land acquisitions, the K&M Farms purchase and annexation up on the north end. We purchased that property, and I want to say it's, don't hold me completely to this, I think it's like 290 acres and then plus some or what have you. Anyway, I just won't look at my other people because they'll tell me if I'm wrong. But we purchased that and annexed that because the commercial corridor, the next commercial corridor that's so critically important to us is Mulberry, and we want to make sure that we've secured that and don't miss out by somebody else grabbing it or annexing it to their town and or not developing it in the highest and best use for us from a resource, from a revenue resource. Harmony Road commercial property. We've purchased some property, 17 acres, just to the east of here. And again, the reason we did that was to be able to incent the right kind of development there so that we can have more local services and things that might not be able to actually afford coming on to a Harmony Road corridor, but things that all of us want, services and what have you that we want. So, attractive and sustainable environment. We've had a lot of investments in our parks and recreation. Just a few quick examples. We brought the community park online. Now we're on the phase 2. We're collaborating with GOCO and with Larimer County and other partners to complete the rest of the Poudre River Trail, including the I-25 connectivity that will then have a 30-mile stretch of trail. TROC, the Timnath Reservoir, again, we've created a 5-acre park up there. Now we're on to the next phase of Timnath Reservoir's developments as well. And again, really focused on everything being connected so that you can commute from one community within Timnath to the other. So things like the underpass under Harmony Road for the trail so that people can safely go across Harmony Road from Timnath Ranch to downtown to enjoy a Saturday afternoon or what have you. We've also done the community events, and again, I think this is really important to note because there was some talk back a while ago that, well, maybe we can't afford the community events, and maybe that's desired but not necessary. And it actually only represents about 1.5% of our entire budget, and it's the thing I get the most comments on from our community, especially the young families. We have over 16,000 people annually attend these events. And I remember the first tree lighting when I came on board to the council, and I'm calling my fellow council members, I'm like, can you guys bring a crock pot of chili? Because we don't really have the money right this minute to be able to, have food. So we brought crock pots of chili and hot chocolate and what have you, and we had 50 people, and now this last year we had over 2,500 people there. So it's very important in creating that sense of place, not going to Fort Collins for those events, but rather right here in our hometown. And of that, about $625,000, 130 of it is currently supported through sponsorships and advertisements. So companies that want to partner with us, like Banner Health and Peterson Toyota and those kinds of folks, to be able to help support those events. And then lastly, we also created just most recently in the last 6 months, and I serve as the chair of the Timnath Foundation. It's a 501c3, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But that is also a way for us to begin to create additional sustainable revenues to be able to support these kinds of things that are the things that we really want, but maybe at some point might have to make a choice between road improvement or community event. And so how do we make these kinds of things self-sustainable? So again, community events, all of them are relatively important. So we try and keep and maintain all of those. Quick tree lighting. This was our first stage event, and the Taste of Timnath is right here. And then our July 4th event that everybody really seems to love. So the Timnath Foundation, I kind of really already mentioned that. Just it does allow for entities or persons to be able to give to Timnath in a way that they wouldn't be able to do necessarily if it was just giving to the town. So it is a nonprofit. They are able to give, again, from a disclosure perspective, it may be tax deductible in part, but whether that's through sponsorships for advertisement or actually gifts or one-time legacies. Maybe people just love their community and would love to be able to contribute $1 million to fund the amphitheater, as an example. Lastly, well, I'm getting really, really close, but Poudre School District, this is really, really important because we have a lot of great relationships, partnerships within the region, and rather than build our own, we take advantage of best in class. Poudre School District is certainly a best in class school district and has nationally acclaimed, scores and all of that kind of thing. But we felt like it was really important that we had our own Timnath feeder school system with a Timnath address, that kids felt like, I go to a Timnath school, but we get to enjoy the benefit of the Poudre School District quality. So we've been working right here in collaboration for the last couple of years, and it's getting very close now, with Fort Collins. The site on Prospect and County Road 5 that will be the high school and middle school site, it actually is already annexed to Fort Collins. And what we're working to do, and they've agreed to do it, and Poudre School District is in favor, and so are we, they're going to de-annex that property, and then we're going to annex it into Timnath so that that school is a Timnath school. And it will have a Timnath address. And that's really critically important because if you go to Timnath Elementary, you go to Bethke Elementary, and then you go to Preston in another community, that's not your Timnath school. The other thing that is important to note is Bethke's full right now, and so the neighborhood kids there at Bethke can't go to Bethke because it's full. So there's a school being built at Highland Meadows, and it will free up ultimately 200 spots, and they will go back to their neighborhood school. Not that it's, we don't mind having them here, but now our kids need the place. So they'll go back to their neighborhood, freeing up the spots for Bethke to be in Timnath, and the kids that are in Timnath near the school, they will have a neighborhood school. Timnath Elementary ultimately will go away. There's a new elementary school site north of Old Town, planned, a site to be kind of determined. It's just right in that area, but we're not 100% sure exactly where it will be. But that will actually be the second elementary in Timnath. And then once the high school is ready to be split into the middle school, there's a site north of Old Town also for the middle school. So again, all of the schools that, the quality of Poudre School District, they will have a Timnath address. We feel like we've done a lot of good things that Timnath residents have wanted. There are a few things on here that get a green check mark that aren't quite yet complete, but they are either in process or budgeted for 2020 or 2021. So if they were, then we've gone ahead and done that. Things like the I-25 Regional Participation Project, that's a huge thing. We actually participated with our other local communities to be able to match a grant with CDOT so that we could get them working faster on the I-25 expansion to the north. Without this project, without our participation and others, that project would be 10 years down the road. And you think I-25 is bad on a Friday afternoon now? 10 years down the road, it would be completely unpalatable. So it's that kind of forward thinking. So if they don't have checks, they're in our 5-year CIP, but they're not in the next 2.5 years. So bright future ahead for Timnath, financially strong. We're very healthy, we're robust, we're ready for the future, we're ready for those folks to come in a planned and managed way, in a financially responsible way. We actually are in the process, after a year long of community outreach and what have you, just about to approve our comprehensive plan update. And so I also encourage you to read that. It's less than the resident survey. It's only about 78 pages or something like that. So go online and be sure to read that. We're hoping to approve that sometime here in the April time frame. I think it's coming before council about then. But again, managing it so that we've set the stage for folks 5 years from now to continue to have the kind of environment that we've been working on this last decade. So again, online, lots of good stuff. Please go ahead and head straight home, get your cup of water and what have you, and start reading. But the last thing that I have, I also want to kind of take us a little bit wider than just Timnath. I've talked all about Timnath, but it's really a regional collaboration. In order to have an enriched community, you can't have something you don't want right across the way, so we work with all of our municipalities in Larimer County to make sure that we are working together for the betterment of the entire northern Colorado community in an enriched way, so that the entire region benefits. Because again, remember, Timnath is right there at the nucleus. If you look at a map, what we do so impacts our neighbors, but what they do also impacts us. So it's so critically important to develop those relationships, and we've been very successful over the last 10 years of being able to, I've got solid relationships with the other communities so that we can work together to make northern Colorado still be on the map, but in a very good way. So I know I went over, and I really apologize, but I'm very excited about all we've done and all we're about to do, and so I couldn't help myself. Thank you.